The transmission ended with a single cutoff sound, and then nothing. Admiral Sarah Ashford sat in her chair on Vigil Station, the relay speaker still warm. The only sound was her silver pocket watch ticking on the desk, 4 seconds slow, as always. The crystal face had a crack from 30 years ago, a training accident in zero gravity. She did not look at the screen. She already knew what the transmission had tried to say. Her hand rested beside a paper form, blue ink in the fountain pen. The form had a single line at the bottom, obliteration protocol, execution confirmed. She picked up the pen, the watch ticked. She signed her name, the ink wet against the paper. Then she set the pen down and folded her hands over the form. On the relay, the silence had stretched for 6 seconds. That was all the message had been, 6 seconds. 6 seconds of a voice she would never hear again. She reached for the watch, turned it over. The crest was worn smooth. Her grandmother had carried it through the Mars conflict in 2047. It had been slow for 30 years. Ashford had never fixed it. She pressed the crown, and the second hand swept forward. It was still ticking. That was the point. In the Onyx Tribunal, 2.8 kilometers of carved dead moon, the 387 delegates had not heard the transmission. They had heard only the vote, 387 to 12. The 12 had seen Earth's fleet. The 387 had never looked. The watch ticked on. I wish I could tell you the council saw it coming. They didn't. Stay with me, because what happened next was written 12 years before anyone read it. Step back. 12 years earlier. Admiral Ashford was 44 then, her hair still dark. She sat in the same chair on Vigil Station, but the desk was cleaner, the coffee cup newer. Lieutenant Mira Tallis brought her tea in a chipped cup. You've been staring at that annexation report for 6 hours, Tallis said. I've been staring at it for 12 years, Ashford replied. I'm just checking the math. The report was from the Vrikari Empire. They had annexed the Velari homeworld, 41,000 Velari dead in the first 11 hours. The Compact had voted 387 to 12 to accept the administrative reorganization. Ashford had been one of the 12. She had seen the Vrikari fleet. She had also seen something else. The way the Thraxian ships moved, their tactical signatures, their blind spots. She had logged every engagement for 3 decades. She pulled a folder from her bottom drawer. It was labeled Resolution 734-2 PIUN in black ink. Filed under Council Procedure 7.1 as a defensive contingency measure. She had written the first draft 12 years ago after the third Vrikari expansion. The resolution allowed for a standing order, a fleet built in secret, to be activated upon any attack on human assets. It had been approved, quietly, by a small committee. It had never been exercised. Tallis read over her shoulder. The trigger is any attack, Ashford said. No matter how small. She pulled out her watch, the same silver watch, already slow, and set it beside the folder. The cracked crystal caught the amber light of the station. She turned to the annexation report. The Velari had no fleet left. Their ambassador, Lysara, had been assigned to the council as a witness. Ashford had read her testimony. It was precise, quiet, and devastating. She picked up her pen. She wrote a single line on a blank document. Warning to the Galactic Compact, Earth will not accept further aggression. This is not a request. Test it and be forgotten. She signed it. The date was today, 12 years before the transmission would end. Then she put the document in a sealed envelope, addressed to the Onyx Tribunal. She did not smile. She looked like a woman who had just started a report she knew would take 12 years to finish. Tallis asked, will they listen? Ashford checked the watch, 4 seconds slow. They will count our ships, she said. They will not count the silence between them. Across the station, Commander Wren Ashford, no relation but same bloodline of patience, was running a drill in the outer reach. The reach was a shipyard network hidden behind a gas giant's mass shadow. Officially, Earth had 40 capital ships. Unofficially, there were 1,200. Each one had been built with components sourced from neutral worlds. Each component logged as civilian infrastructure. The tactical systems were copied from Vrikari and Thraxian vessels. Every encounter had been recorded, analyzed, and reversed. Wren checked his chipped ceramic mug, still full of black tea. He set it in the cup holder. All hands, he said to the empty bridge, prepare for a long wait. In the Onyx Tribunal, Ambassador Lysara sat in the highest row. Her pale blue feathers were barely visible against the dark stone. She had been assigned to the council as a cultural observer. She had watched the vote 387 to 12. She had watched the 12, and she had noticed that none of them were Vakari. She had also noticed that the human representative, a quiet man named Dejo, had not spoken a single word during the debate. He had simply voted no and walked out. Lasara had read the human warning. It was filed as Resolution 7342B, but the council had not discussed it. It was considered a defensive contingency of no consequence. She had kept a copy. She had also kept a small feather from her homeworld, which she touched when the air grew cold. She looked at the empty seat where High Chancellor Weil had announced the annexation. He was already planning the next expansion. The Vakari had not lost a war in 9,000 years. They believed in conquest through administrative reorganization. They believed that a species that prepared without declaring itself was not a threat. It was a bureaucracy. Lasara knew otherwise. She had seen the human convoy logs. They were precise, boring, and utterly consistent. That consistency, she thought, was not peace. It was patience. On Vigil Station, Ashford reviewed the annexation report for the 7th time. She highlighted a single line: Vakari Empire claims all Valari space, effective immediately. She underlined effective immediately. Then she wrote in the margin, noted. She pulled out the watch. It was 14 to 23, but the watch said 14 to 22:56. 4 seconds slow. She did not correct it. She put it back in her pocket. Then she stood, walked to the viewport, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the outer reach was hiding 1,200 ships. Somewhere, a Vakari admiral was laughing at her warning. She did not mind. Laughter cost nothing. But the watch kept ticking. The door opened. Lieutenant Tallis entered with a data slate. Admiral, we've received a new communication from the Council. They are requesting a formal response to the Valari annexation. They want to know if Earth intends to contest it. Ashford turned. Send them the warning again. The same document, word for word. Tallis hesitated. They dismissed it the first time. I know, Ashford said. That is why I'm sending it again. She sat back down, pulled out the watch, and placed it beside the slate. The crystal caught the light. She wrote a note at the bottom of the document. This is not a request. Then she signed it. The pen scratched the paper. The watch ticked. 4 seconds slow, 30 years of slowness. Across the galaxy, High Chancellor Weil received the warning. He read it, laughed, and handed it to Director Thrax Drak. Test them, Weil said. Minimal engagement. See how they respond. Drak nodded. He had 60 ships. He would test. The test came 3 weeks later. A human convoy of 14 freighters was crossing the threshold. A contested region 4.2 light-years from the Valari homeworld. The Thraxian fleet intercepted them. They destroyed 6 freighters before the remaining 8 could flee. 31 humans died. 2 ships lost. The Thraxian commander sent a report. Convoy neutralized. No resistance. Earth is as weak as we assumed. On Vigil Station, Ashford received the casualty report. She read it once. She did not raise her voice. She did not flinch. She looked at the watch, then at the folder labeled Resolution 73042B. She opened it, pulled out the signed warning, and placed it beside the new report. Then she said, aloud, to no one in particular, execute the protocol. The order was transmitted. Commander Ren Ashford received it on his bridge in the outer reach. He had been waiting for this order for 12 years. He tapped a single key. A network of shipyards began to power up. 1,200 ships, hidden behind the gas giant, began to move. Their tactical systems were already calibrated to the Vakari and Thraxian signatures. They had practiced this maneuver in silence for decades. Ren picked up his chipped mug. The tea was still warm. He drank it, then set it down. All hands prepare for jump. Sergeant Jace Sark, the ground liaison, touched the photograph of his daughter. He had kept it in his pocket for every deployment. Let them, he said, try to count us. In the Onyx Tribunal, Ambassador Lisara felt a tremor in the station's harmonics. She looked at the data feed from the outer reach. The mass signature had changed. There were no longer 40 ships. There were 1,200. She counted the numbers on the screen. They did not add up to 40. They added up to something else entirely. She turned to the human representative. Dejo. You knew, she said. He did not answer. He simply folded his hands and waited. The engagement lasted 14 minutes. The Thraxian commander reported a massive energy signature. Then nothing. Director Drac transmitted a single message, 6 seconds long. Earth has the transmission ended. And now the watch ticked on Ashford's desk, 4 seconds slow, as it always had. She looked at the relay screen. The signal had gone dark. She did not need to confirm what she already knew. She reached for the pen again, but she did not need to sign anything else. The signature was already on the form. She folded her hands over the paper and waited. A chime came from the comm panel. Lieutenant Tallis appeared on the secondary display. Admiral, the Council is requesting an immediate update. They've detected the energy spike. Send them the confirmation, Ashford said. And the casualty count. All of it. Tallis paused. All of it. All of it. The lieutenant nodded and cut the link. Ashford looked at the watch. The second hand moved, steady and slow. She had set it beside the form when she signed. She had not moved it. She picked it up now, turned it over. The crack caught the light again, a thin line across the crystal that had been there for 30 years. She ran her thumb over it, felt the edge where the glass had chipped. Her grandmother had worn it through every battle of the Mars conflict. The watch had been slow even then. It had never been fast, never needed to be. It had simply kept going. She set it back down and opened a drawer. Inside was a stack of folders, each labeled with a year. She pulled out the one marked 700-342B and placed it on top of the confirmation form. Then she closed the drawer and stood. The station hummed around her, the recycled air, the distant thrum of life support, the low chatter of the night shift. She walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. The outer reach was no longer hidden. The gas giant's mass shadow had dispersed as the fleet had emerged. The ships were still out there, waiting for further orders. She had not given any. She did not need to. The protocol had been executed. The warning had been delivered. She heard footsteps. Commander Ren Ashford entered, still in his tactical gear. He saluted, but she waved it off. It's done, he said. All 60 Thraxian ships accounted for. No survivors. 17 casualties on our side, she said. All from the initial convoy attack. Yes, Admiral. She turned from the viewport. How long until the Council gets the full report? Already transmitted. They're still processing. The Onyx Tribunal has called an emergency session. She nodded. They will not believe it. They will have to. She looked at him, younger, sharper, but with the same patient eyes she had seen in her own reflection. They will vote again, she said. And this time, the 12 will not be alone. Ren said nothing. He simply waited. She picked up the watch again, slipped it into her pocket. I want you to contact Ambassador Lysara. Privately, tell her I'm sending her a package. A package, the watch, Ashford said. She will know what to do with it. Ren hesitated. Admiral, that watch is. It is time, she said. And time is what they have not counted. He nodded once, then left. In the Onyx Tribunal, the chamber was no longer quiet. Delegates from 44 species shouted over one another, their translators clashing into a wall of sound. The 2.8-kilometer dome, carved from the dead moon's core, had never witnessed such disorder. The drifting orbs that lit the space flickered as the harmonics shifted with the noise. High Chancellor Zorith Val sat at the center of the dais, his 3 eyes fixed on the empty seat where Director Drac had sat. His hammered bronze skin had gone pale, a subtle shift that only those who knew him would catch. His 6-fingered hands gripped the armrests. He had not spoken since the transmission ended. Around him, the Vrikari delegates whispered in their own language. They had not lost a major engagement in 9,000 years. They had never lost an entire expeditionary force in 14 minutes. They did not know how to process what had happened. Because their protocols had no section for total annihilation, Ambassador Lysara sat in the highest row, her pale blue feathers pressed flat against her head. She held a datapad in her talons, its screen dark. She had been given access to the human fleet's preliminary report. She had read it twice. The numbers were precise, cold, and undeniable. She had also received a private message, a short coded transmission from Vigil Station. It had said only, a package is coming. Wait for it. She did not know what the package was, but she had seen the human warning, the one dismissed as bureaucratic theater. She had read it 3 times, and each time she had felt a cold understanding settle in her chest. The humans had not been bluffing. They had been counting. The shouting subsided as the council speaker called for order. The speaker, a gray-furred Falari named Kor, raised both hands. The emergency session will come to order. We have received a formal report from the human Admiral Ashford. I will read the summary. A hush fell over the chamber. Core read, "On this date, Earth Defense Command executed the obliteration protocol as authorized under Resolution 73042B. The trigger condition was met when a Thraxian expeditionary force attacked a human convoy in the threshold, resulting in the deaths of 31 human civilians. In response, a fleet of 1,200 human vessels engaged and destroyed all 60 Thraxian ships. Total engagement time, 14 minutes. Human fleet casualties, 17, all from the initial attack. The warning stands." Silence. Then a Vrakari delegate stood, his voice trembling. This is an act of war. They attacked without declaration. Another delegate, a small avian from the Rho system, answered. "They warned us. They filed a warning. You laughed at it. The warning was it was. It was a fact," Lysara said. She rose from her seat, and every eye turned to her. She walked down the steep steps, her feathers catching the drifting light. She reached the floor of the chamber and stood before the central podium, the same podium from which Val had announced the annexation of her homeworld. "I have read the warning." It said, "Test it and be forgotten." You tested it. They are forgotten. She looked at Vale. His amber eyes had shifted to black, a sign of rage so cold it was almost calm. "You have lost 60 ships," she said. 3,200 crew. Your director Drac is dead. And you are sitting here trying to decide whether to call it a provocation or a massacre. But that is not the question. She held up the datapad. The question is, what do you do now? They have 1,200 ships. They have tactical data on every engagement you have fought for 3 decades. They have been preparing for this moment for 12 years, and they are still patient. She set the datapad down. "I will wait for the full report, but I will tell you what I have already seen." The human fleet did not fire a single shot that was not aimed at a combat vessel. They did not pursue the fleeing ships, there were none. They did not broadcast a victory speech. They simply stopped fighting, because the fight was over. That is not war. That is execution of a signed order. She turned and walked back to her seat. The chamber remained silent. On Vigil Station, Ashford sat alone in her office. The confirmation form was still on her desk, signed and dated. She had not moved it. She had not looked at the casualty list again. She had done her duty. The comm panel chimed. Talus appeared again. "Admiral, the Council has requested a representative. They want to hear directly from Earth. They have my report. They want a voice, Admiral." A human voice. Ashford considered. She thought of the watch, now on its way to Lysara. She thought of the 12 who had voted no, who had seen her fleet years ago. She thought of her grandmother, who had kept time in war and peace. "Tell them I will speak," she said, "but not yet. Let them sit with the silence first." Tallis nodded and closed the link. Ashford looked out the viewport again. The stars were still there, cold and infinite. She did not feel triumph. She felt the weight of a clock that had finally struck its hour. The watch was no longer on her desk. It was on a ship, heading to the Onyx Tribunal, to a woman who had lost everything and was now being given a symbol. She pulled a new sheet of paper from her drawer. She wrote a single line, "The warning stands. Test it again and be forgotten." She signed it with her pen, the same blue ink, and set it aside. Then she leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. The station hummed, the air smelled of recycled oxygen and old coffee. She did not sleep. She waited. Mid-partition rehook at 13,300 chars. A new transmission arrived, not from the Council, but from a source she did not recognize. It was a Vrakari channel, but not an official one. A single line of text appeared on her screen. "You have made a mistake. The Empire does not forget. We will count the ships, and we will find the silence." She stared at the line. It was not a declaration of war. It was a promise, but it was also a mistake, because it revealed that the Vrakari still did not understand. They were counting ships. They were not counting the 12 years of preparation, the 30 years of observation, the family heirlooms passed down through wars. She did not reply. She deleted the message and stood. The watch was already on its way. At the Onyx Tribunal, Lysara waited in her quarters. The package had arrived, a small box sealed with a plain silver band. She opened it with trembling talons. Inside was the silver pocket watch. The crystal was cracked. The hands showed 14-2, but the second's hand had stopped. It was frozen at the moment the last Thraxian ship had gone silent. She turned it over. The Ashford crest was worn smooth. She pressed the crown, But the watch did not tick. It had stopped. It had been stopped for 14 minutes. She held it in her palm and felt the weight of it, not the weight of metal and springs, but the weight of a promise kept. She remembered the human warning. She remembered the 12 who had voted no. She remembered her own homeworld, its 41,000 dead, its silent streets. She set the watch on the table beside her datapad. She would not show it to the council yet. She would wait for the right moment, the moment when they would listen. The emergency session had adjourned for recess. Vol had retreated to his private chambers. His advisors surrounded him, their voices urgent. He ignored them. He stared at a holographic map of the outer reach, now marked with 1,200 human signatures. His third eye twitched. He had never considered that a species could build a fleet without declaring itself. He had never considered that a warning could be a fact. He had spent 9,000 years believing that conquest was the only language that mattered. He had been wrong. He turned to his advisors. Send a message to the Thraxian remnants. Tell them to stand down. Tell them we will reassess. Chancellor, the Thraxian are demanding retaliation. They are dead, Val said. 60 ships, 3,200 crew. There is no one left to demand anything. We will reassess. That is all. He dismissed them and sat alone. The map flickered. The ships did not move. They were waiting. That was the part that unsettled him most. Part split rehook at 50% to 40,000 chars. Ashford's comm chimed again. This time it was a priority channel from the Onyx Tribunal. The speaker's voice was strained. Admiral Ashford, the council has reconvened. There are now 418 delegates present, 31 more than the original vote. They have come to hear the full report. Ambassador Lysara has requested that you address the chamber directly. She says she has something to show them. Ashford opened her mouth to reply, but the speaker continued, there is also a new development. A Thraxian scout ship has been detected entering the threshold. It is not responding to hails. It is carrying a single transmission, repeating on a loop. The message is, we have found the silence. We are coming to count the rest. Ashford's hand went to her empty pocket, where the watch used to be. She looked at the screen. I will address the council, she said. But first, tell Lysara to keep the watch close. She will need it. The link closed. She stood and walked to the viewport. The scout ship was still 3 light years away, but she knew it would not take long. The Vrakari and Thraxian were not done. They would never be done, because they still did not understand that patience was not a pause. It was a position. She turned to her desk and picked up the new warning she had written. The warning stands, test it again and be forgotten. She folded it and placed it in her pocket, the same pocket where the watch had lived for 30 years. She had a speech to prepare. The scout ship was not alone. That was the first thing Admiral Ashford saw when she opened the tactical feed. The lone Thraxian vessel had been a decoy. Behind it, masked by the gravity shadow of a rogue planet, a full Vrakari battle group was moving into the threshold. 40 ships, heavy cruisers, carrier support. They were not coming to talk. Ashford stood at the viewport on Vigil Station, her hands clasped behind her back. She had not spoken to the council yet. She had been waiting for this. She had known, somewhere in the cold logic of her calculations, that the Vrakari would not accept the loss. They would test again. They would find the silence they were looking for. The comm panel behind her crackled. Lieutenant Talas's voice was tight. Admiral, the battle group is on an intercept course with the outer reach. They are moving at full burn. Estimated arrival, 4 hours. They are not coming to the outer reach, Ashford said. They are coming to the council chamber. They are coming to see who will blink first. Talis paused. What do we do? Ashford turned. She walked to her desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the old folder labeled 7342 Ju B. She opened it and looked at the first draft, 12 years old, yellowed paper, her own handwriting. She had written it after the 3rd Vrakari expansion when she had seen the pattern. She had written it in a single night. She had written it like a prayer she did not believe in. She closed the folder and slipped it under her arm. I'm going to the council. You are going to hold the line. If the battle group crosses the threshold, you do not wait for my authorization. You execute Protocol 2. Talis's face went pale. Protocol 2 is the final option, Ashford said. I know what it is. I wrote it. She walked to the door, then stopped. She looked back at the empty desk, the spot where the watch had rested for 30 years. She had given it away. She had given it to Lysara, who had given everything. That was the part the Vrakari did not understand. Earth had not just prepared a fleet. Earth had prepared a memory, a legacy, a patient hand that could pass the weight to another. She left the room without another word. The transport to the Onyx Tribunal took 47 minutes. Ashford spent them looking at the stars. She did not rehearse her speech. She had been writing it for 12 years. The words were not words anymore. They were facts. When she arrived, the chamber was full. 418 delegates sat in the rows, their species bioluminescence and carapaces and feathers catching the drifting light. The air smelled of ozone and cold stone, the same scent she had smelled in every council session she had ever attended. The same scent she had smelled when the Vracari had annexed Valari. She walked to the central podium. She did not look at Val. She did not look at the empty seat where Drac had sat. She looked at Lysara, who sat in the highest row, the silver watch visible in her taloned grip. The watch had stopped. It had stopped at the moment the last Thraxian ship went silent. That was the proof. That was the fact. She placed her hands on the podium and began. 12 years ago, I wrote a warning. It said, "Test it and be forgotten." The council dismissed it. They called it bureaucratic theater. They said Earth had 40 ships and no will to use them. She paused. The chamber was silent. 3 weeks ago, the Thraxian tested it. They destroyed a human convoy. They killed 31 civilians. We responded. We executed the obliteration protocol. We destroyed 60 ships. We eliminated an expeditionary force. We did it in 14 minutes. She looked at Val. His 3 eyes were black, his hammered bronze skin tight. We did it because we had been preparing for 12 years. Not for conquest, not for expansion. For the moment when you proved that you could not be reasoned with. We did not want this. We did not seek this. We simply recognized it. She pulled a single sheet of paper from her pocket, the same warning she had written on Vigil Station. She unfolded it and set it on the podium. This is the warning. It says, "Test it again and be forgotten. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I'm not here to ask for permission. I'm here to tell you that the Vracari battle group currently entering the threshold is making the same mistake. They are counting our ships. They are not counting our patience." She looked at Lysara. "Ambassador, would you please show them?" Lysara rose. She walked down the steep steps, her feathers catching the light. She reached the floor and held up the silver watch. The crystal was cracked. The hands were frozen. "This is what patience looks like," Lysara said. "It does not stop. It does not run fast. It simply counts the time until the truth arrives. The truth is here." The watch stopped 14 minutes after the engagement began. It stopped when the last Thraxian ship died. It stopped because Earth did not need to keep time anymore. The time had already been kept. She set the watch on the podium beside Ashford's warning. The 2 objects sat together, paper and metal, words and time. Ashford looked at the council. "The battle group is 4 hours away. If they cross the threshold, we will respond. We will not ask for permission. We will not declare war. We will simply execute the order that has been on the books for 12 years. She folded her hands. "The question is not whether we will fight. The question is whether you will finally listen." The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted, some in support, most in confusion. The Vracari delegates rose, their translation units spitting rapid-fire accusations. Val remained seated, his eyes fixed on the watch. The council speaker called for order. It took 3 minutes. When the noise subsided, Speaker Corr's gray-furred face was tight. "Admiral Ashford, the council has heard your warning. We will now deliberate." Ashford did not move. "You have 4 hours." She stepped down from the podium and walked to Lysara. "Keep the watch," she said quietly. "You will need it." Lysara nodded. "What will you do?" Ashford looked at the drifting orbs above them. "I will wait. That is what I do." The council deliberations were broadcast to every member species. Ashford watched them on a private feed in a small antechamber. The arguments were circular. The Vracari demanded sanctions. The Falari called for a ceasefire. The Row representatives, whose species had been decimated by Vracari expansion 3 centuries earlier, argued for immediate recognition of Earth's terms. No one mentioned the battle group. No one mentioned the 4 hours. They talked about protocol, about precedent, about the long-term implications of a species that had silently built a fleet. Ashford listened and said nothing. Her comm chimed. It was Wren. "Admiral, the battle group has increased speed. They will arrive at the threshold in 2 hours and 40 minutes. Any new ships? Negative. Still 40. But there is something else. We detected a second transmission from the scout ship. It was not a loop. It was a single short burst. Directed at the Vakari delegates on the council. Do you have it? Yes, I will send it to your slate. The file arrived. Ashford opened it. The message was in Vakari, but the translation was clear. Wait for the council to vote. If they fail us, we will not wait. We will count the ships ourselves. She closed the slate. The Vakari were not testing Earth anymore. They were testing their own allies. They were threatening to turn on the council if the vote did not go their way. She stood. She had to speak again. She walked back into the chamber. The deliberations were still ongoing. The speaker saw her and raised a hand. Admiral, you are not authorized to. You need to see this, she said. She held up her slate. The Vakari battle group has sent a message to their delegates. It says, wait for the council to vote. If they fail us, we will not wait. We will count the ships ourselves. The chamber fell silent. Val's eyes flickered. He had not known about the message. That was clear. Ashford continued. They are not here to enforce a vote. They are here to enforce a result. If the council votes against the Vakari, the battle group will attack, not Earth. The council itself, Lysara rose. Then the question is no longer whether Earth will fight. The question is whether the council will survive the fight. The speaker's face went ashen. This is an act of aggression against the compact itself. Yes, Ashford said, and you have 4 hours to decide what to do about it. The vote was called immediately. The delegates scrambled to their terminals. The count took 7 minutes. When the results appeared on the central display, the chamber went silent. The vote was 418 to 3. The 418 were for Earth's warning. The 3 were Vakari holdouts. Val stood. His eyes were black. He did not speak. He turned and walked out of the chamber. His delegates followed. Lysara looked at the display. Then she looked at Ashford. The 418, she said. That is more than the original 387. The 12 were not alone anymore, Ashford said. They brought friends. She walked to the podium and picked up the silver watch. It was still stopped. 14 minutes. She turned it over and felt the weight of it. Then she set it back down and looked at the council. The battle group is still coming, she said. And they will not accept this vote. They will test the council. They will test the compact. And we will respond. She looked at Lysara. You have the watch. You have the truth. Use it. Lysara nodded. She raised the watch above her head. This is what patience looks like, she said. It does not stop. It does not run fast. It simply counts. And now you have counted. The chamber did not cheer. There was no celebration. There was only the weight of what they had just done. Mid-collapse safety rehook. 70% defeated and 28,000 chars. Ashford's com buzzed. It was Talus, her voice urgent. Admiral, we have a problem. The battle group is still approaching, but we've detected a second wave. 120 ships coming from the Vakari homeworld. They are not waiting for the council's vote. They are coming to finish what the first wave started. Ashford's hand went to her empty pocket. The watch was on the podium. She had given it away, but she still had the paper. The warning, she looked at the screen. How long? 2 hours if they maintain speed. But there's more. The second wave is not just Vakari, it's Thraxian remnants. They have regrouped. They want revenge. Ashford closed her eyes. She had prepared for 12 years. She had prepared for a test. She had not prepared for a war. But the war was coming anyway. She opened her eyes. Send word to the outer reach. Prepare for full deployment. And tell him I need a copy of Protocol 2. Tallis paused. Admiral, Protocol 2 is, I know what it is, Ashford said. Send it. She turned to the council. The Vakari are coming, all of them. We have 2 hours, and then we will have to decide if we are ready to be the species that ends the Empire. Lysara stepped forward, the watch still in her hand. We are ready, she said. We have been ready for 12 years. We just did not know it. Ashford looked at her. For the first time, she allowed herself a small, tight smile. Yes, she said. I think we are. The council chamber emptied. Delegates rushed to their ships, their comms, their worlds. Ashford remained at the podium. She picked up the silver watch and turned it over one more time. The second hand had not moved. It was still frozen at 14 minutes, but she noticed something else, a tiny scratch on the crystal that she had never seen before. It was not a crack. It was a mark, carved into the glass. A single line, a count. She squinted. It was a number. She could not read it clearly, but she knew what it was. It was the number of the warning. She set the watch down and walked to the viewport. The stars were cold and indifferent, but behind them in the outer reach, 1,200 ships were waking up, and behind them in the Onyx Tribunal a broken civilization was beginning to count. The stars did not change when the council fell silent. They did not blink when the Valkyrie fleet crossed the threshold. They did not care. But Ashford cared. She had spent 12 years making sure someone would. She turned from the viewport and walked back to the antechamber. The room was small, bare, the same gray walls as every other room on Vigil Station. She sat down at a metal table and poured herself a cup of water from a carafe. She did not drink it, she just held it, feeling the cool ceramic against her palms. She had not slept in 48 hours. She did not need to. The body ran on something else now. The same something that had kept her grandmother awake during the Mars conflict. The same something that had kept the shipyards running in silence for 12 years. She set the cup down and straightened her collar. There was no mirror, but she did not need one. She knew what she looked like. She looked like a woman who had finished a report. Her comm clicked. Talas's voice, "Admiral, the second wave is 40 minutes out." "They are not slowing. They are preparing for a full assault." "Are we ready?" "Yes, Admiral. The Outer Reach fleet is fully deployed. Protocol 2 is on standby. The Council has given us tactical support, 12 additional ships from the Rho system, 6 from Philar." Ashford nodded. "Good. Tell them to hold position. We wait for them to make the first move, and if they attack, then we execute the protocol." She closed the link and stood. She walked to the door and opened it. The corridor was empty. The station hummed. She walked toward the docking bay, where her transport was waiting. The transport reached the Outer Reach in 11 minutes. Ashford stepped onto the bridge of the Sentinel, Captain Kalen Ashford at the helm. He saluted. She returned it. "Status! All 1,200 ships are in formation. Targeting systems are locked on the incoming wave. We have confirmed identification: Valkyrie heavy cruisers, Thraxian remnants, a command vessel at the rear." She looked at the tactical display. The Red Swarm was approaching fast. She counted 60 ships, not 120. They had split their forces. Half were heading for the council chamber itself. She had expected that. She turned to Kalen. "They are testing again. They want to see if we will defend the council or defend ourselves. What do we do?" She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, the warning. She unfolded it, read it once, then folded it back. "We defend both. Order half the fleet to protect the council chamber. The other half stays here. We engage the main force." Kalen nodded and gave the orders. The display shifted as the fleet split into 2 equal halves. The Valkyrie wave adjusted, trying to flank. But Earth's ships had been practicing this for 12 years. They knew every move. Ashford watched the countdown. 20 minutes, 15, 10. She picked up a comm and opened a channel to the Valkyrie command vessel. "This is Admiral Sarah Ashford of Earth Defense Command. You are entering contested space. Turn back now, or face the consequences." The reply came after a delay. A deep, resonant voice, "Valkyrie, but not Val. We have counted your ships. We are not afraid." She closed her eyes for a moment. Then she said, "You counted the wrong number." She closed the link and turned to Kalen. "Fire on my mark." The display showed the Valkyrie ships closing the gap. 8 minutes, 7. She looked at her empty pocket. The watch was not there. But she could feel it. The weight of it. The time it had kept. The time it had stopped. She raised her hand. The bridge went silent. "Mark." The volley was not a battle. It was a calculation. 1,200 ships fired in a single coordinated pulse. The targeting systems had been calibrated to Valkyrie tactical signatures for 30 years. Each shot found its mark. The Valkyrie command vessel went dark. The cruisers shattered. The Thraxian remnants scattered, then died. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. When the fire stopped, the display showed nothing but debris. The second wave was gone. All 60 ships. 0 survivors. Ashford lowered her hand. She did not watch the debris. She turned to Kalen. "Report casualties." "None, Admiral." "They did not fire a single shot." She nodded. She had known they would not. They had been too confident, too certain. She sat down in the command chair. She did not smile. She looked like a woman who had just finished a report. "Send word to the council," she said. "The threat is neutralized. The warning stands. The Onyx Tribunal reconvened 2 hours later. The chamber was full, not just the 418 delegates, but hundreds more who had come to see the aftermath. The drifting orbs cast pale light on the faces of the survivors. Lysara stood at the podium, the silver watch in her hand. The crystal was cracked, the hands frozen. She held it up. The battle is over. The Valkyrie fleet is destroyed. Earth has defended the Council and the Compact. The warning has been delivered. She turned to the empty seat where Val had sat. He had not returned. He had disappeared during the chaos. Some said he had fled. Others said he had been captured by his own people. No one knew, Lysara continued. The Council has voted. We have accepted Earth's terms. The Compact will recognize Earth's sovereignty and its right to defend itself. There will be no further aggression. She looked at the delegates, but that is not the lesson. The lesson is this. The Council forgot that a warning is not a request. The Valkyrie forgot that patience is not a pause, and Earth remembered. Earth remembered for 12 years. That is why we are still here. She set the watch on the podium. It was silent. It had been stopped for 14 minutes, and it would never tick again. Ashford arrived at the council chamber late. The session was already adjourned. Most delegates had left. She walked to the podium where Lysara stood alone. Lysara handed her the watch. It is yours. It has done its work. Ashford took it. She turned it over in her palm. The scratch she had noticed earlier was still there, a thin line, almost invisible. She held it up to the light. It was not a scratch. It was a number, etched into the glass, a single digit, 1.2. No, that was not a number. It was a fraction, a count. She looked at Lysara. What is this? Lysara shrugged. I do not know. It was there when I received it. Perhaps it has always been there. Perhaps it appeared when the watch stopped. Ashford studied it. The number 12. No, a 1 and a 2. It could be a year. It could be a warning. She realized it did not matter. What mattered was that it was there, a mark left by time itself. She slipped the watch into her pocket. It was empty now, but it was not empty. It carried a weight that no one could count. She walked out of the chamber and into the corridor. The station was quiet. The war was over. The compact had changed, but the stars were still there, cold and infinite. She stopped at a viewport and looked out. Beyond the glass, the debris of the Valkyrie fleet was still drifting. In the distance, the outer reach was dark, its ships returning to their hidden berths. Behind her, the council chamber was empty, its drifting orbs slowly spinning. She pulled out the watch. The hands were still frozen. The second hand would never move again. She pressed it to her ear. There was no ticking. There was only silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Not the silence of absence, the silence of something that had finished. She put the watch back in her pocket. She did not wait for anything else. She had waited long enough. She walked down the corridor, and the station hummed around her. The recycled air smelled of old coffee and cold metal. She passed a maintenance bot, a sleeping guard, a data terminal blinking with the news of the vote. She did not stop. At the end of the corridor was a small observation deck. She stepped inside. The deck was empty, the chairs folded against the wall. She sat down and looked out at the stars. Her grandmother had sat like this, in a different war, a different century. She had held the same watch. She had watched the stars and waited. She had known that waiting was not weakness. It was the only way to be ready. Ashford sat in the silence. The watch was still. The stars were still. She closed her eyes. She did not sleep. She just breathed, and the station breathed with her. When she opened her eyes, the first light of a distant sun was beginning to creep over the edge of the viewport. It was not Earth's sun. It was a sun that had never seen war, but it would see it now. The galaxy had changed, and the watch had stopped. She did not need to count anymore.